on. Is it working now? I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, now I'm on. All right, well, thank you guys for your time this evening. So I'm just going to share with you some data and our findings from our library service hours. So just to give you an overall picture of what we've done, we polled, or I guess surveyed, the public in 3 different ways. So one in community conversations that we hosted in all 12 libraries in April and May of 2017, so this year. We also surveyed patrons, so in 2 ways, paper surveys that were available in all of our library branches, and then with an online survey. So this is just the survey data that we received overall. I also have information by community, but just for sake of time, otherwise we'd be here all evening, I gave you our overall data. So we got responses from 1,664 people. Those are our 12 different branches where we hosted community conversations, and then we also made the, as I said, the surveys available at our satellite branches and then online. Okay, so this is just so you have an understanding of where we received our survey responses. The top 3 responses came from Rincon Valley with 20%, over 300 responses. Roanoke Park Cotati with 17%, 274 responses. And then Central Santa Rosa with 12%. And then, as you can see, reflected with the rest of the branches. Okay, so we, in our survey, we asked 4 main questions. This is our first question, and just so you know, all 4 questions were asked the same in the community conversations using paper surveys and the online surveys, so the questions didn't differ. The first question, when do you visit your library most? We were interested in when folks were currently using the library to get an understanding. So the top 3 responses were weekday afternoons was the most popular, Saturday afternoons, and weekday mornings. Though these were the top 3, you can see that there wasn't huge disparities between one or the other. So we asked when they visit the most. In our conversations, a lot of folks said that they tend to visit whenever they're able. So there wasn't, while they might come weekday mornings often, there is some flexibility in that, but just wanted to share that with you. Our second question, what does your typical week look like? So what we were really looking for was kind of some trends. Do folks typically travel outside of the city to go to work, or understanding the demographics of those that were responding to the survey. The top 3, number 1 was retired with 36%, worked varied days and hours with 27%. And then typical work week. So most said Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or something similar to that was the responses. So we just wanted to get an understanding if there were any trends to keep in mind when thinking of library service hours. The third question is the most popular. And what we asked was, when do you find yourself wanting to use the library but can't because it's not open? We really thought about how we asked this question, when do you want to use your library? Because the typical response is, well, always. We want our library open always. So we wanted to be real intentional with how we asked and to get kind of thoughtful responses, thinking about the hours that would be the most useful or most meaningful. So trying to find, when do people think, oh, I wish I can go to the library right now, but it's not open. So the top 3 responses were Sunday afternoons. Between 12 to 3 was one of the times that were popular, but really afternoons. So 12 to 3, 1 to 4, or 2 to 6, just depending. But Sunday mornings were not popular as a response. So just to give you some thoughts behind that. The second most popular was weekday evenings until 8 p.m., with the exception of Fridays. And we kind of heard that loud and clear. Most people said Monday through Thursday makes sense, but Friday evenings, they don't. I didn't get a huge response about wanting to spend their time at the library on Friday evenings. Just a little caveat from some of the conversations we had in our community conversations. We're currently open Mondays and Wednesdays until 9 p.m. Most folks responded that they would like to see their library open consistently Monday through Thursday, so maybe until 8 rather than staying open so late. So I'll give you some data. We've been collecting about our patron counts between the hours of 8 and 9 just to give you some perspective of what that looks like. And then the third most popular was Saturday evenings. So just extending the time. We currently close at 4 p.m. on Saturdays, but looking to stay open until 6. A lot of people said they often forget, and so they show up at 3:30 and they're like, oh, that's right, I only have 30 minutes. So a 6 o'clock end time is very popular. And I've heard that from a lot of staff as well. And then moving on, the last question we asked was, what do you hope to do at the library during these extended hours? The top 3 responses were just checking out materials, books, DVDs, that sort of thing. Number 2 with 21% was have a quiet place to read, study, or research, so really just spend time in the library. And then number 3 was attend library programs, classes, workshops, that sort of thing. But as you could see with the rest of the data, there wasn't any huge disparities amongst that either. A lot of folks said, checked all the boxes and said that they would just come and do whichever, attend a program, attend a hosted event, use the internet, that sort of thing. And then just a recap on our community conversations. As I said earlier, they took place in April and May of 2017 at all 12 library branches. Each of our events were supported by the community's library advisory board and the friends groups, and many of the board members, you all commissioners and friends were able to attend our community conversations. As I said earlier, we asked the same 4 questions, so the conversation was really focused on library service hours. And then just some feedback that we received that I wanted to share are qualitative and quantitative, so conversations in the survey data matched aligned pretty well. So the top 3 that we heard from our community conversations was Saturdays until 6. That was kind of a number 1 interest for expanded library hours. The second was Sunday afternoons. So a lot of people said really afternoons depending on time, but just after noon at any time after 12 or 1. And then the third most popular was weekdays. So Monday through Thursday is extended until 8, especially for those that work. Because a 6 o'clock end time, that's typically when they get off work, 5:30 or 6. Other topics that came up to share, I heard this a few times, a possible request for seasonal hours. So, maybe differing our hours in the spring or summertime versus the fall and winter. So that was just one of the topics of conversation that came up a few times. Another thing just to be mindful of is community events. For example, in Windsor, if we chose to expand hours on Sunday mornings, they have their farmers market right in the library parking lot. So just thinking of some of the consequences or ramifications that could come with not having our parking lot open for patrons that might want to use the library. So thinking of that. I heard from a few communities as well that they viewed varied hours within our communities as a benefit. So if one branch was open on a certain day and time that maybe the branch that they frequent, then they would be able to still use library services even if it wasn't in their community. And another interest that came up, and this came a lot with the 4th question, what would they do with these expanded library hours, but was an interest in PM programming. So a lot of parents who came that work said, if we were open until 8 o'clock, then maybe you could have evening story times, because currently they weren't able to take their children to story times, which a lot of our branches have begun to do on Monday evenings and Wednesday evenings. Another huge interest was evening book clubs. So again, for folks at work, being able to attend programs that we typically have during the day, since they wouldn't be able to attend. And then this is the data from our evening patron counts. So what I've done here is, you can see on the left-hand side, it's divided by branch. And then I've averaged the counts, and all the branches have been counting how many patrons either walk in the doors or are there between the hours of 8 and 9. So I've just averaged it for Mondays and Wednesdays. And then I've also, just so you get an understanding of what our highest attendance days are and our lowest. So you can see the difference between Mondays and Wednesdays. So as you can see, some of our averages are might be a little skewed is, for example, Roseland, you could see that on a Wednesday, or their average is 9.8, but their highest was 50, and that was the night that we had an event, and so it was heavily attended, and their lowest was 2. So just showing some of the differences there. Given the data that we received, one of the things that we noticed loud and clear was that there's a program on that night. Our attendance is up significantly higher than if there's nothing planned, as you can see from some of the lower evenings. And that's all of our data. Do you have any questions? Yes, Tom?
We were saying that there's a program.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a program, you're more likely to have people staying into the 8 to 9 hour.
Yes.
And my question is, would the programs extend into the 8 to 9 hour, or would they be over before 8 o'clock?
They vary. So it depends on some events, or for example, in Roseland, that was a specific event, I think with a community partner. So there are some branches that have standing events during the evenings, but really it's been varied. So it could be a one-time event, or some have been consistent programs where they do, evening story times at 6:30. But between the 8 and 9, we don't have as many children types events because bedtime.
My other question is, you're showing patrons between 8 and 9, but what would the patrons be between 7 and 8? Because I think the implication is that there's a drop-off after 8 o'clock, and I'd like to see what the 7 to 8 numbers are. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Barbara?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yes, I was also curious what Tom just brought up, and in addition, since we just started these late hours and Mondays in May, I was curious what months and whether you have a sense of whether they're building or not, because if we just averaged, May and June, that's not going to be an indication of real numbers.
This data is from when we opened in May until the first week of September. And
could you see any trends? Were they building?
The major trends we saw was just if there was events during that evening, but they were pretty consistent per community.
But did you look at it by month? So like the month of May, nobody knew we were open, and then by September, more people knew we were open. Had it built? Because an average can really blur that.
Yeah, I just didn't want to give you too large of something to stare at, but we did have some increases, as you could see, but they were pretty consistent. So I can share that data with you if you'd like to see every single week.
Well, I was just curious about your observation, if you analyzed it.
Yes, they did increase, but not significantly, where it was in the beginning 5 people and then September every week being 30, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner May?
I think I said this before, but I think having been to evening programs at the library, when you close at 8, you have to finish up about 7:30, 7:45, and that makes the program, which couldn't start till about 6:30, shortened. So as we are thinking about data versus on the ground, the staying open till 9 does allow for programs to really happen.
Right. That's a good point. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay. Well, we have a discussion later in the agenda, so commissioners can think about all of this information.
And I have the data per community, too, if you're interested to see it, so I'll leave it here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work.
I was going to say one thing about the programs. I think that we had talked about as an organizational management team, and prior to that as the ELT, we talked about the programming taking place from 7 to 8:30, so that somebody getting off work could get into the library, get to the program, and then there'd be a half-hour cleanup time after the programs. And that was sort of the thinking behind that. And there are so many different kinds of programs that have currently been scheduled, but they're all along that time frame, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. And now on to item 7.2, all staff day survey results. Welcome, Suzanne.
Hi. Thank you. So I just wanted to give you a brief oral report because we didn't have time to get this into the commission packet on the Staff Day 2017. We did a 4-question survey after the staff day, and basically we wanted to just ask people how they felt. First question was, how would you rate 2017 staff day overall? And the scale was from 1 star being poor to 4 stars being great. And the weighted average was 3.42. There were 107 people answering the survey out of about 200 attending, so we felt that we only gave people about 3 days to respond. So we wanted those fresh opinions right off the, we didn't want people to overthink it. Although there was plenty of overthinking, I think, maybe. So, but I felt really, it was pleasing. A lot of people had positive feedback. They really enjoyed the speaker. They really enjoyed Tracy's keynote speech. The agenda, they gave comments like well planned, well thought out, best staff day I'd ever seen. Then there were comments like too much time spent on objective thoughts. Maybe, there was just comments across the gamut. So next question was, please rate Mike Robbins' keynote address, 1 star being poor, 4 stars being great. The average was 3.55. And, comments from really inspiring, great speaker, to the only downside, I don't like crying in public, 4 stars anyway, so that was positive, I would say. The next question was, please give your opinion on lunch, anywhere from 1 star to 4 stars, and the overall rating on that was 2.85. One person did not fare out so well from lunch, and then other people, again, fewer cookies, more carrots. So the comments, could go from everywhere. But overall, I think the ratings on staff day were very high, and most importantly were the programs that we presented after lunch, because we did breakout sessions that had ages and stages of youth, homelessness in Sonoma County, climate action, NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and engaging your Latino community. So ages and stages, which was the from Jeannie Harmon from the Santa Rosa JC Child Development Department, her average, or the average for that breakout session, was 3.86. The homelessness in Sonoma County's weighted average was 3.67. The climate action had a 3.53 weighted average. The disability had a Disability 101 had a 4.52. And then NAMI had 3.28 weighted average, and the Engaging Your Latino population had a 2.93, which the only negative, I guess, comments on that was they felt they were being sold given kind of a sales pitch. But aside from that, it was still given overall positive ratings. I think that it came out as, I wasn't here last year, so I don't know what the previous staff day feedbacks have been, but there, was talked about, and I think we can only go up from here, which is positive, and I felt really positive about it. The feedback that was given towards our interim director and the staff that worked really hard to put it all together was, it went over really well, and so I just wanted to give that report. They were very thankful for the donations from the foundation, and again, it was just really, and for those of you that could attend, it was really great to see you there, so thank you.
Thank you, and I was able to attend at least a session until right after lunch, and I enjoyed it very much, and I also want to compliment the library on the choice of setting. I thought it was a really lovely place to hold the all staff day. It seemed to fit everybody really well, and there were lots of places to go for the separate courses, so it was great.
Yes.
Free parking.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, and there was a question on things we could do to improve next year. So I think that we will, as a committee, whoever is on that committee, I assume HR and Public Services will continue to work on that. we'll take those, all those inputs and use it to work on for next year.
Okay, and any comments from other commissioners? Commissioner Garcia?
I had the opportunity to attend, and you were all so hardworking. And every time I turned around, somebody was lifting a box or Jaylene was moving something. I felt really well fed. And especially like all the little snacky stuff that kept people there. And perhaps there were salads and there were sandwiches and, I don't know what to do next time. And I was very moved by the speaker and had quite a few people come up and talk to me and smile. And I have been to 3 staff days, and really they just get better and better. And the only improvement would be that if we decide to go back to Rohnert Park, which is fine, it's a nice facility, that ask for some help to set up the tables and chairs. But I will say everyone just pitched in, and I didn't see a lot of complaining or any of that stuff. So nice facility, and maybe, I don't know, maybe they want a barbecue or something afterward. But I felt very well. There was lots of food left over, but everyone has their own opinion about stuff.
Yeah, food is generally something to keep people together.
Well, it's kind of like, how were the chairs? Were they soft and comfy? Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment, a few. I attended also, and I stayed all day, and I would give it at least 3.42 stars, if not more. I have mentioned this to our interim director and also to Kyle, who I know put a lot of work into it. I don't know who all was on the staff team, but I commend all the staff team. But I talked to Kyle. Since this was in Rohnert Park, it would have been really nice if I would have known about it, since I'm the Rohnert Park commissioner. And I'm down there all the time at the community center, and I could have arranged for things like tour of the Spreckles Theater, which is right there and real beautiful, and the big gym that we have. So we just could have added, I think, something, and the mayor would have loved to come down and welcomed everybody. So I think this is just something to keep in mind, and if we move it around, same thing would be true. If it moves to Windsor or whatever, to just let the commissioner who represents that library to be maybe a little bit more involved in it. I thought it was wonderful. I loved our interim director's address, and I'm going to remember the story about the wedding ring in the sands forever. And I enjoyed the breakout groups. Anyway, the whole thing was very inspiring, and I also felt just kind of good vibes from all the staff. It was really fun to talk to people and mix and mingle, and I enjoyed it. So thanks to everybody who worked on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Well, good job, everybody, and we look forward to next year, too. All right. Well, that takes us to item 8, Commission and Liaison Reports. And I just, before we start on these, I do want to alert the committee chairs that in the future, we're, given the timing of the committee meeting and the ability to get it done in time for the agenda, that we've been asked to produce written committee reports that would be included in the agenda. So we have the assistance of Jane Clickman, who comes and takes our minutes, so things should be able to be pulled together fairly quickly, depending on when the committee has their actual meeting versus when the agenda has to be completed. So just a heads up on that. And so we can start at the far end with Commissioner Heavenridge.
Okay, I attended the Guerneville Lab on the 13th, and we basically, it was interesting because we're looking for new lab members. We've had a number of resignations, and it was just really apropos to bring up the library advisory board process and application. So we spent a lot of the meeting talking about that and how we can recruit more people, and we had some really good ideas, and that was the big part of that meeting. And I also attended all staff day, and I thought it was great. And I too, there wasn't enough carrots. I would be my, I don't know. Anyway, but it was good. The food was good. And I especially liked all the commissioners standing up there and shaking people that won awards hands, you know. I think I want to go back to where we make up biographies of people. I enjoyed doing that personally in past years, but in past years we actually would talk a little bit about the person and introduce, but I guess that was nixed for, maybe we talked too long, I don't know, but anyway. But I enjoyed the all-staff days, so, yeah.
I have no report. I was out of the country.
Well, I'm finally getting my stride back and getting back into it. The SOPs have been consuming most of my time, but I have been doing a couple of other things that have been fun. One is I signed up for another edX class, and it's on identifying community needs for public library management. I thought that would supplement the advocacy and, you know, give me more things to think about. But in signing up for that, it's part of an 8-class program. You don't have to take all the classes, but one of the classes, and I'd like to recommend people at least look at it and consider it, is budgeting and finance for public libraries. And it might give some of us who aren't quite as involved in that part of it, and even those of us who are, because I'm going to sign up for it, a better foundation to work from. So you can just go to edX on your computer and find courses, and then page down and you'll find the budget one. Budgeting and finance for public libraries. But they're really good. They're free classes. They're done by very quality colleges and universities like Harvard. I think the one I'm taking right now, the Identifying the Community Needs, is done by the University of Michigan. I've done one by Smith. Just all the really good colleges. I can't remember who did the budgeting one offhand, but definitely something to look into. And the other thing, well, two other things. One, I attended a training by Sharon Ellison, How to Talk Politics Across the Current Divide. And what I walked away from there was not so much the political aspect of it, but just dealing when there's tough talk and there's struggles going on within a group. And it put me back to thinking about some different kinds of conferences that I have put together. And one of them was around groups and storming and norming and how you have these different struggles that go along. So I'm kind of beginning to put something together to maybe present to the commission at some point. And finally, this morning, while I was waiting for the car to be fixed, I was reading a Pew Center research study, and it said in there that librarians are the most trusted source of information in the United States, period. Then it drops down, health and care is 39%, then it drops way down to 24%, and then on into the high teens. So, kudos to librarians. Thank you. And that's all I have to say for that.
Commissioner Garcia, thank you very much. Commissioner Fox. Go ahead.
Okay, I attended the Santa Rosa Lab that was held last Wednesday night, and we have one of the best youth lab members ever who said things like, people don't know about tutor.com. They don't know about SAT prep. And how do we get the word out to people, and that it exists, and then came out of that at our retreat and at other meetings that maybe all the team LAM members should get together. So that's what came out of that. In addition, the chair of our lab, Nancy Parsons, came to our retreat on Saturday to learn the role of the labs. This lab meets every other month, and so they won't be meeting again until November. And we skip, because it's the Santa Rosa Lab, we go from one library to another. And the other thing is that we were at the county town branch, and we won't be going there for a while because they're going to have a refresh, and they're really looking forward to it. So thank you.
I'm going to skip myself, and I'll come back to me at the end. But Commissioner May.
At the most recent Petaluma Lab, we had 2 new team members, and it was a decision to do 2 because the team members tend to be high-level functioning teams, and they were worried that they wouldn't be able to make it to all the meetings. We also had an interesting, we're working on setting a goal, and I'm not quite sure how to proceed, but we want to digitize all the lab minutes and agendas for the entire years of the lab, so that particularly as regards the Petaluma Lab, we have the bequests, and we would like to be able to track decisions that have been made and so forth, and to go into the binders that not only have the minutes, but they also have the summer reading program for 1984 and so forth. So we need to organize our minutes. I also came up with an idea today when I was reading the document that Reese is working on the standing operating procedures about our presentations to our appointing bodies. And I was thinking that it really might be useful if we could find some people in our branches that have benefited from something that the library has, a program they've done, or some aspect of the library services, so that when we come to the city councils, we can say, and Mary Smith would like to talk to you about how she got help in writing her college essay at the library, or some sort of putting real people in front of it, instead of us just as talking heads. And then I did have a question for Reese about how long are the classes from edX? Are the classes at edX?
Well, some of them are week, but these have to be self-paced. So you can go along at your own speed, which I really like.
Okay, and how does it compare to the ethics training in terms of time? Is it longer than the 2 hours for the ethics training, or?
Well, there's, let's see, in our community, each one, I think there are 6 components or 6 lessons to it.
Okay.
2 to 4 hours per lesson, but you can stretch it out over however many weeks you need to do it.
Okay.
And you just do it in your own pace.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ebright.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes, the lab hasn't met since the last time I did a report, but the Friends met on September, I can't read the date, but anyway, a couple of weeks ago. Their Friends book sale is this week, starts Wednesday night, membership night, and I'll be helping with that. Somebody was talking about at our workshop who likes to schmooze, and that's one of my favorite opportunities to schmooze. I work the membership desk, and we give out candy. I went to Target today and bought our candy supplies, so everybody loves the chocolate. I ran into somebody the other day at the store, said, "Oh, I ran into you at membership table," or I don't know, anyway. So it's a good use of my desire. Maybe you want to schmooze at a friend's sale. I also attended the quilt show, and I commend Commissioner Garcia, who is vice president of one of the guilds. There were several guilds represented. It was really cool, and that was people were in there, with their sewing machines and making quilts and doing embroidery, and it was just really neat. And everybody I think that I talked to, that I saw, was very engaged and, good turnout. So that was really cool. That was in Rohnert Park this year. And let's see. Our lab is doing a table. I reported this last time, but Founders Day is this Saturday. And we had a huge turnout last year, so we're planning for this year. And we'll have a table there right next to the City of Rohnert Park's table. And we'll be there all day. And fortunately, we have some library bling to give away, and I think we'll have a really good turnout. So more connection to the community that way. And I already mentioned Staff Day, so I think that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Neff.
The Windsor Lab will be meeting Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, so that's the 10th at 5 p.m. at the library. And Interim Director Gray will be doing a coffee with the director at Windsor on Thursday, this coming Thursday at 11. And that's all.
All right, thank you, everybody. I wanted to give a brief update. Sebastopol doesn't meet this month, so I don't have a report for them. The Friends had their book sale recently and reported that they did better than last year at this time, so they were quite pleased with that. And their next book sale will be in December, and that will be a children's book sale only. I did want to give a little brief summary of what our workshop on Saturday, what we talked about at that workshop, but I also wanted to thank Jane Clickman for the work she did to get that set up and to support the commission, and for Director Gray to join us and help with our conversation. That was terrific. And we did have a member of the public, Nancy Persons, come and join us, as Commissioner Garcia mentioned, and that was very beneficial too. I'll kind of start with that part of the meeting first, because one of the things that came out of our discussion about library advisory boards is that the commission would really like to see a countywide lab meeting done again. So to that end, we're going to begin starting work on planning that. And I think I'll talk to Tracy and to Jane. Jane and I talked a little bit today about thinking about where we might hold it, how many people might be involved. And one of the things that we want to be sure to have as part of that meeting is a Brown Act refresher for attendees. So we need to think about other topics, and we will be also contacting the labs for suggestions on topics that they would like to see as part of that group, and get some participation in the planning from the library advisory boards. We also, we had standard operating procedures on the agenda. I think, and Reese, you can jump in here. Commissioners have an assignment, right? They're to read the booklet that you put together from the work that has been done previously. It sounds like some commissioners have started that or finished that. But we also had some other items. Reese also gave us at that meeting a list of the priorities that the commission had determined at the previous workshop that we held back in June, and she'd made a list of things that we'd accomplished already. It was a really very long list, which 42 items. That's really good. So we're going to be organizing that too into kind of topics as to what areas they address as far as things that we want to get accomplished. We did spend a lot of time at the beginning of the meeting talking about the proposal to hire a consultant to assist the library commissioners in focusing on what we want to get done in the future, and getting the ground floor finished being built as far as the commission's responsibilities and work. So we're still discussing that. I think it was left, we had a suggestion from one commissioner that each commissioner write a short paragraph, 50 words, as to what they would want a consultant to do for the library. And that, I think that's pretty much...
To Reese.
To Jane, I think. If Jane could be the collector of those paragraphs, that would be good. So we went a little bit over time at that meeting, but it was, I felt that what was great is everybody showed up and everybody participated, and it was, I felt that it was a productive meeting in that way. All right, so now we move on to commission and liaison reports, unless anybody else has anything to add about that. Okay. So there's no report for the Director Evaluation Committee, so that takes us to Finance, 8.2.2. Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, just preliminarily, I understand about doing written reports. I've always done a written report, and they just kind of sit on top of all my other pile of library stuff. So I've never done anything with them. I think that it makes sense to have a written report, although I'm not sure the timing is always going to work because of the way the packets get put together. So I don't know.
Well, we'll try and do the best we can with that.
Yeah, so maybe Jane can help us with whatever deadlines that's going to be and whether that's going to work out or not. Anyway, the Finance Committee met on September 25th. We were late this month because of the schedule of the commission meetings and so forth. We met in the library conference room. I was there, Commissioner Whistler and Commissioner Neff were there, and the interim director and the CFO were there. We didn't have any members of the public. There were only 3 of us commissioners there, so we put off the selection of the chair and the vice chair until the next meeting. CFO Neiman reported that the auditors have all the materials they need to begin the audit, and a draft report should be ready for review by the Finance Committee in December, which is nice and early and way different than the past. So we're very pleased. This is to be the second year with this group of auditors, and they're really moving along. It's really great. We reviewed the document roles and responsibilities of the Finance Committee and didn't make any changes. We felt it was pretty complete as it was for now. We looked at the monthly finance reports. Our CFO doesn't expect any budget adjustments at this point in time. The OPEB ad hoc committee, we're just kind of keeping that on our agenda every month. There has not been another meeting. We're waiting for the actuarial study to be completed. And again, CFO Neiman reported that the actuary has all the information that he needs to begin the study. We anticipate a meeting in November, and just a postscript. We now, as far as I know, have a meeting set up for November 14th. The Measure Y Oversight Committee, again, we're just keeping that on the agenda, so the Finance Committee keeps an eye on it. That's going to meet again November 8th. That'd be the second meeting of that committee. And CFO Neiman reported that he had also met with Tom Ford, who is the only member of the committee who couldn't come to the first meeting, and he unfortunately can't come to the second meeting, but he has had a separate meeting with the CFO, so he's on track with what the committee is going to be doing. We had a very extended discussion on the next budget and budget priorities and how the commission can be more involved in this process, especially with the recognition that in the past, under our bare bones scenario, there wasn't nearly as much opportunity or maybe importance on what the commission felt was important because we were just trying to keep, body and soul together. Now that are these very significant new funds coming in from the sales tax, there's really a place now for more input from the commissioners on what they consider important. For example, should we make adjustments in the categories of hours, materials, events, building maintenance, and so forth? In addition, we talked about funds from the foundation and from the Friends groups being looked at for very specific needs and purchases in the coming budget cycle. Our interim director reported that she's reviewing all the building leases, and she noted that there are no leases for some of the buildings. She and Chair Whistler are going to make a presentation on Thursday evening, October the 12th, to the Mayors and Council Members Association, and it's out at Legends at the Bennett Valley Golf Course. The mayors and council members, for people who don't know about this is every mayor and every council member throughout the whole county are part of this association, and many of them come to these meetings. And this will be a wonderful opportunity to have our library represented by our chair and our interim director, and so everybody there will be able to get a real good update about all the great things that are going on. And that's it. The next Finance Committee meeting will be Monday, October 16th at 3 o'clock in the Central Library Conference Room. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Advocacy 8.2.3, please. Commissioner Foxen.
Unfortunately. Advocacy. I'll start with the legislative stuff. The SCA 3, which we all know about, that's the 55% vote needed to do capital improvements, etc., has been shelved as a 2-year bill. So they can bring it back up in January of 2018. What happened was everybody was voting down straight party line, and apparently one of the Democrats in the Senate is in some trouble, so his vote became a little and squeaky. And so they weren't sure they would have enough votes to pass it. So they got it shelved. They turned it into this 2-year bill so they can pull it out next week. Now, I had a bright idea, and I don't know if it'll work, but I have a lot of friends who live in San Diego, which is a highly Republican area. The representatives from there are Republican. I have family and friends in Orange County who are also, it's a very Republican area. But all these people are supporters of libraries, regardless of their political stance. And so I'm going to talk to them and see if I can't encourage them to contact their representatives, especially if they happen to be Republican, and ask them to support this SCA 3 for us. And I don't know how it's going to work, but I thought maybe I'd bring it up, and if any of you happen to know people in other areas that might be supportive of the libraries non-political as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so that was one. I also, in doing the research on the SCA 3, ran across another House bill that has also been shelved that is relating to personal services that are currently or customarily performed by county employees. And this is specifically, it seems, directed at counties. However, the CLA, California Library Association, has come out very strongly against it. The California County Librarians are against it. California State Associations of the County with over 100 nonprofits are against it because they feel it will curtail some of their ability to do work effectively and to be able to contract it out effectively. So it might be something that we need to examine and look at and possibly at some point do some letter writing and take a stance on. Also in that same process, I'm wondering if the commission should, and I'd like some response to this one, take a position on DACA. The California Library Association is standing with the ALA, the American Library Association, in support of DACA, and they're kind of asking for resolutions or some form of acknowledgement and support of the same thing to protect the dreamers as they deal with the issues that they're faced with right now. So closer to home, we're working with Angelina and Helena and moving closer to better representation of the commission on the website, which will be nice. We have been talking about clarifying our relationships with the Friends, the Labs Foundation, and finding some talking points for the labs to work with, etc. I'm doing the PowerPoint, so if you guys can get me your bios, I would appreciate it. I also got to thinking when Tim was saying, let's get somebody to come up there. If you can't get a person there, maybe you can get a story from somebody that I could include from your area, and that would personalize it to your library. And that would be another way of doing kind of the same thing if we don't have an actual body to stand up there with us. I think that would be a great way to bring it home and make each, PowerPoint somewhat the same, but also somewhat, honed in on a particular library. So thank you for the idea, Tim. Yeah, get the bios to me. Oh, and finally, just, my little sustainability thing. They've been doing workshops in all the libraries. I think they have 4 or 5 more to go for the do-it-yourself kits. And they've had 12 to 30 people show up at each workshop. And they're very pleased with the turnout and really happy. And I'm excited because to me that is one of the things that libraries do is they educate the public. And it's a way of educating them, giving them some solid information, and then something actual physical to work with. And I know I keep talking about the do-it-yourself kit, but I think it's a great deal. Anyway, so I believe that's all I have to say for that.
All right, and when is the advocacy meeting next?
Next Monday.
Okay, and
The 9th.
Okay, and we talked about there's 2 vacancies that we could have commissioners.
Yeah, let's see, Paul Heavenridge, Tim, and I are the 3 people on the advocacy committee at this point in time, and if somebody else would like to join us, we would be more than happy to have you there. Linda's joining us by phone, so that puts it down to 1. So if you would like to, great, we would be happy to have you.
All right, great. Thank you, Grace. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes,
on
the foundation meets October 18th. The foundation has 2 members on our Y Oversight Committee. They also hold the money for the Roseland Coalition, or the building of the branch right now, and more to come after October 18th.
All right, thank you. And I think that we don't have an OPEB committee report. We're waiting for the actuarial study. So then ad hoc SOP committee hasn't met. As I mentioned, Reese passed out what we've done so far to the commission for their comments. Measure Y oversight, no report. The ad hoc director search committee, the RFP is ready to go. It's in its final state. So I believe that will be going out sometime this week to the list of potential vendors that we've identified. And it gave a little update on the September 30th workshop. So thank you all very much for all of your work on all these different committees. It's really appreciated. So then we have the correspondence and press coverage, which, I'm sorry, Commissioner Foxen?
Well, I want to say something about correspondence.
Okay.
I picked up the Cloverdale Reveille, which is a very small little newspaper. I can't remember the main publisher that does it, but in any case, I opened it up, and there was Stephanie Hope Cochran's, our branch librarian's, picture. And she had an article, and I remembered that this is the 2nd or 3rd one I've seen, and it's called Off the Shelf. And it talks about the things that are happening in the library there in Cloverdale. And it was really fun to see, because it was kind of a fun, uplifting article, but it also just listed everything that was happening. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Oh, thank you. And I was going to comment that in the list of press links that we received, Cloverdale dominated in the articles about the library. So she's very active up there. Any other comments about coverage?
That makes me wonder, are we supposed to submit things to somebody about this, or how do they magically appear under the press coverage? There's always something in the Roanoke Park paper about the library. I like your idea of what you're saying about the photo and so forth, but our activities are always listed. Is that the kind of thing, or you were just looking for articles?
I think it is helpful if any commissioner or any staff member comes across an article in any newspaper that is about the library to bring it to the attention of Jane and Director Gray. That's because it's hard for them to see every single paper. We don't have a press person that goes through and sends us clippings. So if we see something, we ought to pass it on. Sure.
What we have set up now is Google has a Google alert, and we've set it up that if they recognize Sonoma Library in any publications that they are aware of, they send that Google notice to me, and that's how I get our resources. But absolutely send me anything that you notice that you'd like to have included.
All right, so that takes us to item 10, our consent calendar, which is, I'm sorry, Commissioner Garcia? Oh, I'm sorry. Speak up.
Didn't we used to have a notebook that they passed out? Would that be something that we could revive so we could sort of see some of these articles?
We used to have a binder. We used to have a binder of correspondence and complaints from the public, and we used to have a binder of news clippings. So we could talk about how the best way to make sure that everything is brought to the attention of the commission, if possible. Maybe if you all have suggestions, and binder often would sit on the counter here, and nobody would really look at it, so it was a lot of work for people to put together. But if we can, maybe make sure that everybody will talk about it. Okay. All right. So if you have suggestions on how we can improve that, please bring them forward.
We also include any emails that are sent through the public website to the commission. There is a place to email the commission, and people can do that, and you always receive any of those that are sent to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I think, so we'll work on that. So, all right. So on to the consent calendar, unless anybody... Oh, Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I wanted to pull for comment item 10.5, the liability insurance renewal.
Okay. Any other items? All right, so we will move that down under action items by motion. It's, as you may recall, we have discussed this item previously, so that's why it's ending up on the consent calendar. So we have the regular meeting minutes from September 11th. We have we're asking for authorization for the request for proposal for the library director recruitment, a correction to the September agenda cover document on the LAB process, and we're being asked to approve the LAB application and reappointment process. Are there any other matters that a commissioner or the member of the public would like to have removed from this calendar and have it placed in action items? All right, seeing none, items 10.1 through 10.4 are approved by consensus.
I abstained from the minutes because I wasn't here.
All right.
I also abstained from the minutes for the same reason.
All right, so noted. So now we're on to items, the discussion items under agenda item 11, and 11.1 is Interim Director Gray's report.
I don't have much to add verbally to my report. I do want to thank Suzanne and Angelina and Kyle for all the staff. Everyone in this room helped who was at staff day, and the commissioners who were there. Thank you for coming. And I just want to thank all of the staff and those that help prepare and take down and clean up. Thank you all very much. And I thought it was very successful.
Are there any questions about the written? Okay, well, we'll go to 11.2, which is the management report. So are there any comments or questions or things that staff would like to especially highlight from the 11.2.1 monthly activities document? Commissioner Ebright?
I would say that the Food for Fines that we're doing again this year is a wonderful thing, and I would also say I think it's a ripe for media coverage.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Me? On page 84, this is back to the community engagement that we heard the report on tonight. So as a countywide system, these three things, Sunday afternoons, Wednesday evenings, and Saturday evenings, this is the result. Is this what we're going to go with? Are we comfortable that the survey results were, was a good survey. I mean, it's hard to get a statistically whatever. I mean, I have no idea, whether we, but if this is this what we're going to affirm as the direction we're going, the priority?
Well, if you could carry that over to item 11.4, that's when we'll talk about library service hours, and we can discuss that at that time.
Thank you.
Commissioner May?
I just had on page 91, Vicki and Mike met with Envisionware regarding, and it dawned on me that remembering the history of the bringing into the library of self-check, and whether I think everybody sort of accepts it and it's wonderful and all those things, but a piece of what was mentioned as a benefit was a decrease in repeated injury, and I'm wondering whether
repetitive stress injury.
Right, whether there has been any comparison to before self-check and since self-check as to whether the projected improvement has happened.
I see a big smile on Vicki's face. Would you like to comment?
Well, I can comment. I don't know the answer to that question. I never knew that was part of why we were putting self-check in the libraries. I think it was to reduce congestion at the service desks and to free up people's time for really, truly, personally helping the patrons. I do know that some of the libraries utilize self-check much better and more consistently than others. So by way of example, Sebastopol, Sonoma, even Cloverdale, there's really a high usage level. Also, I think that we could do a better job at some of the bigger libraries, such as Rohnert Park, such as the Central Library. But as far as the repetitive stress injury thing, that really has to do with RFID, and that really has to do with the movement of materials at the service desks themselves. So we have a monthly report that we generate that tells the percent of first-time checkouts at the self-check units. And like I explained, some of the libraries consistently do better than others with the use of the self-checks. And some of the branches have quite a larger number than others. So you'll see in the reports that some of the self-check machines don't get as much use as others. And that may be due to placement and things like that. But your question about repetitive stress, I think I really don't know the answer to that. But I do know that self-check really is about patron and customer self-service. And I've worked in libraries where there were banks of self-checks and people really, enjoyed using that. But we had staff that were constantly out there helping with that. So it's just a different environment.
Okay, I just was basically also wondering, in terms of our workers' comp, whether there has been a drop in that aspect. No? Okay, thank you.
No change, real.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Rohnert Park is way up high.
Nice catch.
So.
Nice catch, Q. Yeah, well, I think we'll see the workers' comp as we look at our costs, over time, because we see our costs reduce, then that'll be part of it. Any other comments, Commissioner May?
Nope.
All right, I wanted to ask about a couple things, or make comments about a couple things. I think those stories about the adult reading program are really cool stories, and it's lovely to have those. So I think It's a great idea if we were to incorporate things like that in our presentations to the public when we go back and talk to our appointing authorities. But I also wanted to just say the summer reading program looked like it was hugely successful, and that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. So good job and good advertising, because I think that's a huge part of it. And I also wanted to thank Tracy for the cooling spaces that were offered on that really, really hot day and extending the library hours to allow for that in the Sonoma Valley Library. And this kiosk for listening for a change, I think that I'm curious about that. I haven't seen that, and it sounds like something we might really want to advertise to bring people in to see that. So the couple more things. The school partnerships for the English learner evening classes at Luther Burbank. I'm thinking that's new. We haven't done that before, or have we? See it under the adult literacy? Maybe we have, but it seems like a great collaboration. And then I do have a question about the collections and materials management. So it looks like we're just starting off centralizing ordering of some kinds of books. Is that correct? This says ordering adult nonfiction and juvenile nonfiction titles. Are we doing more? Or is it just on those areas currently, and it'll be expanded later? And at some point, maybe we can have, maybe not tonight, but another time, if you would like to, Jamie, it would be lovely to hear how it's all kind of falling into place as far as the branch discretionary funds and those sort of things. So are we just doing nonfiction?
No, we're doing, I don't have the complete list in front of me, but we're doing, I don't know, at least half, I would say, of all of the collections. So all of adult nonfiction, much of juvenile fiction and nonfiction. The things we're not doing yet are AV materials and some of our digital collections. And it just started October 1, so.
This whole thing?
Yes.
Started October 1. Okay, so
Yes.
it'd be interesting to hear how it goes along. Maybe in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months we can get some update on how it's working.
Sure.
Thank you.
Be happy to.
So I had a question about these apps. Hi, Kathy.
I just wanted to answer the question that you posed a moment ago about the literacy outreach ESL classes. In the past, we had a federal grant that was the WIOA, which is Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, and that grant paid for these 2 classes that we hosted in schools. The paperwork of the grant, which we got $10,000 a year from them, and the paperwork was untenable, so we actually dropped, we did not apply for that grant this year, but we are maintaining those classes, and we're just kind of rebranding them, and we're going to try to expand that model out to other locations in the county. So it's not really new, but it's kind of new.
Okay, great, thank you. So the question I have about the apps, so this Libby is a new app from Overdrive. Do we get rid of our Overdrive app and get this?
Actually, we did not get rid of the old Overdrive app, but this is the new, revised, easier to use model. And so it's a both and. I would encourage you to try the new Overdrive Libby app. You'll see what I'm talking about just out of the chute. It just, there's a lot of complexity with the Overdrive app for your iPad or your iPhone, and this is a lot more straightforward. And so if you just want some help afterwards, I'll happily help you with that. People are really excited about it because probably a ton of complaints we get from our patrons at the public service desk, at the reference desk, is help with Overdrive.
I know it is.
It's just, it has been very difficult to use, and I think this clears up a lot of things. We had a nice meeting with the Overdrive people probably about 2 weeks ago or something. And anyway, it's quite a bit better.
Okay, good. Check it out. And then the Zinio, do we get rid of the old Zinio app?
Well, so here's the complexity with Zenio that I'll talk about for a moment. First of all, you have to go to our website, and you have to go to the Zenio part of our website in the electronic databases. You have to register there, and then you can use the apps. My problem with all of that is, why do you have an app if you have to go to the website to first get on the thing? So right now we're still subscribing to Zenio, and our new collections leader has just sent out a poll actually to staff to discuss basically about that, and we've spent some time at the last 2 digital branch team meetings discussing Zenio, and then there is an alternative one from EBSCO called Flickster, I think. Flix. Is that right, Jamie? Flickster? Yeah, Flickster. That's right. So it has fewer offerings as far as magazine subscriptions than Zenio, but it's much easier to use. So they're all working on that very diligently.
Okay. All right. And then I just wondered, we had talked, I recall a few months ago when we first heard about this virtual reality computer system.
Sure. So I can talk about that. That's a grant that we received, and those have actually, there is one set up in Rohnert Park, and Nicole Fernandez is leading the charge out in Rohnert Park. She's already had 2 informational meetings about it, and then there's another setup at the Healdsburg Branch Library, and we just recently learned that we may be able to get 2 more virtual reality grants with a different headset, an HTC Vive. So, but what I know, at least at Rohnert Park, Nicole has done a wonderful job of sharing with the public, and that's part of the thing. You have to attend one of these informational sessions, and then there will be some individual sessions. You have to be age 14 or over, you have to sign a waiver, and they're working on the programming as well at Healdsburg. They have not had a public informational meeting yet, but John Haupt tells me they're going to. So.
All right, great, thanks. Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Hauser?
On a couple of these things, and I don't use any of them, so it's irrelevant for me. But you seem to have an old program, and then you have an updated program. And are we paying for both? Why are we paying for both? Should we just have one or the other, or is it just a question we're kind of feeling around trying to find something that works well?
I'm sorry, I don't know what program you're talking about.
We're talking about Overdrive, and then Overdrive Libby or something that's
okay,
similar.
So
Zenio and something else. And
Zenio
like
and Flix and Flipster. So first of all, Overdrive is a company that sells us ebooks and e-audio materials. They have an application which is branded called Overdrive as well. They have just released their new app, which is called Libby, and they have redone the app so that it's much easier to use. And so we'll be encouraging our patrons to discontinue use of the old Blue Overdrive app and move to the new Libby app, because it really streamlines and makes a lot easier selecting, placing a hold on an e-materials and so forth. So it'll be a discontinuation process, like many things that we're doing. Similarly, the Zinio, which is e-magazine subscriptions. So think People Magazine, think cooking magazines, any kind of PC magazine subscription you can think of, and you can read these on your electronic smart device, your iPad, your computer, and so forth. And right now, they have just released 2 new apps for Zinio. It's still pretty confusing. I'm still not convinced it's our best choice, but we are subscribed to that right now. And so, does that help answer your question?
A little bit.
So essentially, it's no additional charge for these?
No, there's no, I mean, they've released these apps. They've gone through an extensive, they explained to us from Overdrive when they were here to visit us a couple of weeks ago that they've gone through an extensive training period, and they have held back on really pushing the marketing of the Libby app, but they encouraged us to try it, to use it, to share it with our patrons, and so we are, and it really will replace the Blue Overdrive app.
Okay, I see 2 hands. I saw Commissioner McKenzie first and then Commissioner May.
Yes, I wanted to comment on, I put this under a category, food for thought. We have this section called Interlibrary Loan Improvements, and we're talking about, our system borrows 300 titles from other libraries on behalf of our patrons. It sounds like it's really loud. And we're only lending 60 titles. So I'm sure we have a much greater population, and that's part of it. But just personal example, and just in this concept of weeding and how many books we're discarding, major amounts of books, like 25 shelves worth or something in Roanoke Park, just a huge weeding going on in order to prepare for all the new materials that are coming in without buying any new shelving or anything. We're just purging a lot. So, and I know this is common, and it's commonly done in libraries and so forth, but last week, Jake, my husband's a big reader, and he saw an article about the best mystery writers ever or something. So he went into our app, and we didn't have any of them, of this famous guy who I've never heard of, but he was like one of the best top mystery writers. We didn't have any. And so one came in, though, from Mendo Lake, and it's hilarious. It's this ancient book, and you open it up, and it has a library card in it. And, it's a really old book, but they saved it because this guy is, classic. So somewhere in between there, I like I said, this is just food for thought, but at some point in time, just talking about, our purging and our materials. And I think it is pointed out potentially here with the fact that we're borrowing more from other libraries. That may have something to do with the collections on what we're keeping. So that's my comment.
Commissioner May?
Back to Tom's question. The way I would say it is we're paying for the service of Overdrive, and there are 2 ways to access it, and we're not paying for the 2 different ways to access it. Is that appropriate?
Yes, that's totally appropriate. And they didn't want to just rip out the one app and not have it work anymore because people have it saved on their devices and so forth. But ultimately, one will supplant the other.
Right.
Thank you. Director Gray.
I just wanted to follow up on a couple things. The Listening for a Change, I know Angelina is working on the press release, so that will be going out about the second kiosk at Central. And then I did want to recognize, regarding the cooling space at Sonoma Valley, I want to recognize Lisa Musgrove, the branch manager there, who did initiate that. Her and another staff did stay late that day. Because I think Sonoma had the highest temps that day over Labor Day weekend, so I wanted to recognize her and her staff. And then for the interlibrary loan, I could, without looking at our specific statistics, how I think it's overall general that the public libraries for interlibrary loan that people are looking for, it's usually the academic titles are really specific. So that's why typical public libraries have a higher rate of asking for interlibrary loan from other agencies or other libraries than, and I believe that I don't have, that's just my first inclination without looking at our statistics, but that's pretty typical.
So that interlibrary loan is not the same as the fact that we share resources with Mendo Lake?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
All right. Thank you very much.
I just want to say one more thing. We put in charging stations at all the libraries. So for your smart device, we have them in every single branch location, even some of the smaller ones. And in Petaluma, they're going to have their second one. It's going to be in the teen area. Their teen librarians were adamant about the second one going in the teen space. And then similarly at the Central Library in the children's and teen area, we're going to have that second charging station. And the new charging stations will have a wireless shelf where you just simply lay the phone for because there are several models of phone now that don't need a cable anymore.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. I know that Sonoma State has the very same model that we purchased. So do they at Kaiser Permanente for the patients there. And I'm trying to remember, I think the Santa Rosa JC is using the same models as well. So that we got a lot of good positive feelings about that. The Roanoke Park one, I don't know if it's gotten used much yet. Nancy was wondering if we should put out some kind of press release. Maybe we should. I don't know. People just walk right up to it, at least in the other branch locations. They're like, wow, cool. Let me plug in here. So I don't know. It's right as you walk to the reference desk on that left-hand side. There's a pillar right there. And so try it out. Stand by your phone. It's got nice branding. Catherine Greco did a fabulous job with branding them. So it has all of our logo and everything on it. Brightly colored.
Great. Thank you very much. So if there are no more comments, let's move on to item 11.2.2, the monthly financial report.
The financials start on page 93. You'll see the general cash fund at the top there has been going down. That's normal for this time of year. And then the sales tax cash balance continues to go up. We've received $1.5 million through the end of August in sales tax receipts. Just to give you an indication, they go up and down, and they're 2 months behind. The one we received about a week ago was for July, and it was almost $1.3 million by itself. So a lot more sales tax generated in the summertime. Anyway, the tourist industry helps. Nothing real huge to talk about other than what I've already said about the tax revenue. We had one large item there, the PG&E bill, a little bit shy of $45,000. And if you get back into the detail on page 98, it's the detail of the sales tax fund. You'll see that more and more items are beginning to flow through there. And that will continue to grow as it goes on. But you'll see a big chunk of materials coming in there in September's financial report. But a lot of the things are allocated into the sales tax, into the Measure Y funds, things like janitorial and security and PG&E. So they run a little bit behind because we have to see what the invoices have come in to do and then allocate a certain percentage, 21% or whatever it is, to the Measure Y funds for those things. So it runs a little bit behind, but by the end of the year it'll be all caught up just because we leave the month open longer, and that will continue to grow the expenses, especially you'll see next month in the materials, like I said, and also in the capital expenditures, because we're upgrading the staff areas and all the branches because of all the new people. We've also got the Rohnert Park move, the expenses for Northwest, a lot of stuff Dave's working on to make those figures grow each month. So good stuff, though. So that's really about it. That's all I had about the monthly financials. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
Commissioner Garcia.
First of all, thank you. You're balancing a lot of balls in the air with the move. My question is, when you move to the new facility, there is the regular general fund and then there's the Y fund. Will any of that, or is it a mixture?
The furniture and things like that, the move, we had budgeted in the Measure Y funds for it. The rent for the building, there's discussion and opinions about that. What we did for this year is allocated that rent in the property tax fund. But like I said, there is some discussion about whether that should be in the Measure Y fund, because a lot of the reason we're moving there is because of space, because of new employees with Measure Y and things like that. So it's something to talk about in the upcoming budget cycle.
Commissioner May.
It's beginning to be an old saw that I keep playing, but you did mention that Interim Director Gray is going to be looking at the leases, and I'd like to really emphasize to see if the leases can get us into the world of solar, and so that we don't own the building, so putting something on the roof requires something on the lease, but $44,000 could be cut significantly. So just as the leases are looked at, I want to re-emphasize that.
Okay. And just one other quick thing, we're as a staff, we're beginning to work on next year's budget. Jaylene and I sat down, I think that was on Friday, and worked backwards from the February budget workshop meeting, and figured out that the schedule is really tight. So we got to get working on it now. One of the key components that I think you all talked about was getting your priorities by November 15th. And then also a big time-consuming thing is if we are going to be open more hours, we need to know that as soon as possible also, because that's not as easy as just saying, oh, how much does this cost? We'll put it there. There's a whole bunch of schedules that Keo and her folks do to figure out how many bodies we need, and it takes quite a bit of time. So I encourage you to get that to us as soon as you can. And yeah, we're going to be working on deadlines. And like I said, when we really started working backwards, our eyes kind of got big, and our heart began to, or my heart anyway, began to beat a little more rapidly. I don't know about hers, but we've got a lot to do in a short period of time. So,
thank you, and we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we discussed it at our meeting as a priority for the commission to work on.
Great, thanks.
Any other comments?
Just to amplify that, so all the commissioners are to get me their priorities by October the 9th, and then I will bring them to our Finance Committee meeting on October the 16th.
Okay.
So
great.
we should have a nice consolidated list for our Finance Committee.
Great.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. So that takes us to, thank you very much, Ken. That takes us to item 11.3, Accessibility Services Webpage and ADA Guidelines and Grievance Procedures. And
so this We put it as an information, so, and if Kathy DeWeese and Suzanne Silva have anything to add, they both worked on this as well. The first part is an accessibility services webpage to have that Kathy worked on, just compiling all the services that we do offer in the libraries. And then the other two documents are basically the text from the Disabilities Act, the notice under the Americans with Disability Act. We want to post this on our website, and then we also want to post the grievance procedure under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So these aren't policies per se, but they are procedures, and a lot of libraries as well as other government agencies do have these posted on their website. We did have our council review both documents, the grievance procedures and the notice, so they've reviewed them. This is the document after they've reviewed it, and the staff looked at it and revised some of the ADA coordinator, which Suzanne Civil will be the library's designated ADA coordinator in case there is somebody wants to go through the grievance procedure.
Okay, I see 3 hands. Commissioner Heavenridge?
As I was reading this, the definition of a service animal, does that really include miniature horses?
It does.
Okay. That's very interesting. I've learned something.
Commissioner Garcia?
I know we don't have a lot of policies and procedures where they should be, and I would like to thank those of you who worked on this, how important it is, and that you're getting it down slowly but surely, but thank you for doing this.
Commissioner McKenzie?
So this is the first, we haven't actually had this in place, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to, on the page one called 101, I'm sure this is just a little weird thing, but clone this basic page. Doesn't belong in there, right? And I had a few more little comments, questions.
Yeah, there's a few things on that page that it showed on that because it was in my account on the computer that is in editing mode. Yeah. That's not actually in the page.
Okay, I figured that. That was just a little thing, and it is a draft. I was curious about the video relay service for the deaf. It allows deaf patrons to make outgoing calls. Where is that? Whose phone? Or, how does that work? Want me to repeat that question?
It's on page 101 under Assistive Technology Video Relay Service for the Deaf.
Yeah, we do subscribe to this service called Purple, and it's a Purple video relay service for the deaf. And the way I understand it works is if a person lets a staff member know that they need this, I think it's just a streaming service that we log in and there's a person on the other side that actually interprets. I think. Is that how it works? Yes. Yes, that's how it works.
So somebody would go back to the service desk, for example, and ask for this?
So each branch, this was initiated by Rachel Okaza, one of our librarians at Central, I believe a year or two ago, and there's a designated computer at each in branch. But as Kathy said, that is correct, and if Suzanne has anything to add.
I would just say that before this went live, that clearly all staff would need to know what every one of these services meant, how to access them, and if they were not available immediately, but what time of lead time would be necessary, and the training. Because while we wouldn't expect staff to be experts in all these, just the liaison to the community. And then for the ADA portion of it, if somebody from the community wants to, in the odd event that they'd want to file a grievance, we'd have to be able to get them the mechanism to file a grievance or do that, so that we can the forms or whatever are helpful in helping somebody to frame their complaint, because sometimes it's hard to contain those issues and to try to help them what they actually are, what their issue is, and then how we can actually help them remedy that issue. So we're just trying to be compliant and then, make the...
We haven't finished all the operational details then, so...
But we're just we're trying to get this ready to be going out there for them.
So just a couple other quick things. One is animals other than service animals. The miniature horse thing is hilarious. But how do we distinguish that from the read for a dog? Because we always have dogs walking through Roner Park and they're not service dogs, and does that create any kind of a issue with people? Or because this says that it's other than service animals are not permitted inside, and that isn't really true.
I think that the library has not been enforcing the policy that it's allowed animals other than service animals into the library. So this again might be one of those culture and policy changes. So enforcing it.
Well, I don't mean just like somebody bringing their little poodle in a carton, but I mean the regular read to a dog days.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's no.
So we do have a set of guidelines and procedures that specifically is around the Read to a Dog program, and there is a statement in there that says that that dogs or animals are not allowed in the library except for service animals or animals that are participating in a library-sponsored program.
So I'm just saying then that maybe this, to be actually accurate, should have some sort of reference to that also, because it says they're not permitted and they are. We do have another, in parentheses, also read to dog.
Not in programs, exactly.
Right.
Which is why we're going over it with you here first.
Okay, and then my very last thing is under effective communications. I was wondering if all the forum rooms have been updated with those extra loopy things, or the way for the public to hear. And Vicky's shaking her head. And
if you're talking about assistive listening loops, we don't have those in every location. We do at the central library. The price of those, and we hope to update all the forum rooms. That's still in my wheelhouse. There's just there are more pressing things that are going on, but there are plans for assistive listening loops in at least the larger branch locations, and we can look at that for all the branches, going forward. But I had only allocated that for the larger locations like Petaluma and Rohnert.
Rohnert Park?
Yeah.
I'm just concerned because I know we had a complaint already about that, and I didn't know if this puts us into any legal jeopardy by not having assisted hearing option in our forum rooms. I just don't know.
Well, there's still the request that if you need an assistive device, to make the request and within a reasonable amount of time, so we can get it for you if we don't have it readily available. So, if we don't have it at that branch, we can either get it or work with the community to make it available to that person. So
this is some sort of little portable device rather than having the whole room wired for it.
It just depends on what the situation is. I mean, we have to comply with the ADA, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to because we don't own all of our buildings, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to rewire the entire building or do something. It just depends on what the nature of the request is, which is why we ask that they come to us as soon as they know they need the accommodation.
Okay, I just would suggest that we keep it on our maybe front burner about all of our forum rooms so people can hear.
Yes, as soon as we can, and then we would start with the larger ones because those are the most popular, visited ones. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Commissioner May.
I want to question about the grievance procedure. I may be not reading it well, but it doesn't seem to have any means of if the grievance isn't agreed to in other words, if there's still an impasse on the grievance, I don't see what happens after. It seems like people get letters explaining something, but then do they have to agree to the result? Or, you understand my question? Is there an appeal process if I'm grieving something that my ADA needs have not been met, It looks like there's a standard procedure to discuss it with staff, but if I'm still not happy with that discussion, I don't see any steps beyond that we'll talk about it.
Right. Well, we will, I mean, the grievance process is listed out that we will take the steps to remedy it to the best that we can without causing an undue hardship. So we'll discuss it back and forth to see what type of accommodation we can provide if we cannot provide the accommodation that they request. So we'll work with them to find a suitable accommodation that will be effective.
Okay.
The second to last paragraph on the back on page 106, the last sentence, where appropriate in a format accessible to the complainant, indicating a final resolution.
Okay, but suppose there isn't one.
Agree to disagree? No, it's serious though that we can only, there's steps that you do to measure an ADA accommodation, and so we will do the things that we can do within our power, but certain tests that you can do. So they have, their other remedies are outside of the library.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll be bringing, obviously, this back, but this is the first step one, just to.
Well, I just have a question, because wouldn't it, if the library director, if they disagreed with the library director's decision, wouldn't it go to the commission after that?
After that commission, yes, but then they may still disagree with you as a commission.
Right, it's just not.
It's not in here? Okay.
Yeah, it just ends with the library director.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, we can add that on there.
Not that we want.
Yeah.
Complaints, but then, I think that would, before litigation.
Right.
Should
have a remedy. Yeah. Well, yes, definitely.
Okay.
I think this was before we made me the person.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, great. And so these changes will be added to it, and then will we see it in November to approve it, or just do we need to approve it?
November, or we'll put it on consent, I think, just for agreement. It's not technically a policy, but I think it's a good thing to have the changes on the consent calendar, either November or a future meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good job. I know that it's something that we've needed for a long time, and it's nice to see that it's finally almost completed. Thank you, everybody.
I have one quick comment. So along with being ADA compliant and the policies, how's our website for being 508 compliant?
Well, let me say this, two things. We're making some efforts to make some big changes both to the website itself to comply, as well as working on the intranet. We just have one guy who's split every which way right now. So, but yeah, we are not fully ADA compliant. And in our libraries, we don't have screen readers like JAWS and other assistive tools like that. We have screen magnifier tools, but as far as accommodating the blind, by way of example, with a screen reader like JAWS, we don't have that. And I would say that it would be important for us to make a stab at purchasing some of that software. JAWS is sort of the industry standard used in public libraries nationwide, and it's not inexpensive. So we're talking around $1,500 a pop. So times 12, there you go. But it is something that we have to look at and should go in our budget request, probably in software for next budget cycle. As well, the changes that are going to be necessary for the website in order to make it compliant are going to be extensive, and we'll do the best we can right now, short of, looking at hiring someone else or a contractor or both, to get us up to speed. But see, these are things that, because we have only had 2 dimes to rub together for such a long time, there's so many things that we need to do like this. But correct, we should have screen readers. We should have more ADA acceptable resources in all of our libraries.
Thank you for that. So that takes us to 11.4, library service hours, discussion of that. So it was good to hear the information from the work that Angelina has done, and I think we all participated in those surveys ourselves. And and we saw the recommendation in the management report. Let me find that. Which, so in the management report under the community engagement section on page 84, they recommend that we open Sunday afternoons from 12 to 3, weekday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m., and Saturday evenings until 6 p.m. And I know we probably can't do that all at once right this minute. So I know Tracy had some thoughts on what we could do now if the commission would like.
Sure. As Ken mentioned, for the budget process to get the commission's priorities, and if library hours are the priority, what we'll need is the priorities for hours. If you all decide the 3 possible scenarios, then we can take it back to staff. The biggest impact will be for Keo and the branch managers to come up with the staffing structure in the branches, especially for the larger branches. There's a lot more staff and service points, so coming up with scheduling. We have certain parameters within the current MOU that we have to give staff 2 days off in a row, twice a month, I believe it is, so we have to keep within that. Sundays, time and a half, so we have to look at all of those to compile it. I think the easiest, what the branch managers have said that wouldn't have, and talking with Ken, wouldn't have as much of a financial impact or scheduling impact, which we could probably do even within this fiscal year, is extending our hours on Saturday until 6 o'clock. That has the least effect. My guess, I think, if you all decide that you do want us to open until 6 on Saturdays, we could probably do it. I would want to give, I would say springtime, to give staff time to readjust schedules. What we'd have to change our signage, change our, some of our HVAC is on timers, changing those kinds of things. So I think that we could do in this fiscal year. Any other change that may require additional staff and a larger financial impact, we could put in the discussions for the next fiscal's budget. That would be my recommendation.
And so when you say the least effect, you mean the least fiscal impact?
Correct. And change of staff. The Saturday hours currently, because it's a 6-hour day for the 40-hour-a-week staff, they're making up that 2 hours throughout the week right now. So they're coming in maybe a half an hour early, 4 days a week, to make up for the 2 hours on Saturday, because it's just a 6-hour work day. So for the full-time staff, they're making up that hour, those 2 hours already throughout the week. So for the full-time staff, it wouldn't have a huge impact staying later, unless they've had things planned or something. So giving them some amount of time of changing the schedule. But yes, it would have the least impact financially and would be the easiest to change for that reason, scheduling and cost.
And I just have one more question about the weekday evenings. So this suggestion of weekday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m., does that mean that we're open, what time are we open till on Mondays?
So Mondays and Wednesdays until 9.
Okay, so would that change that to 8? Are we talking about Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to 8?
I think per the, what page is that on? Let's see.
Not 84.
Are you looking for the slideshow or the... So this is on page 84 for
from the management report, from what the community conversations.
Well, the yes.
Oh, okay. Weekday evenings, 6 to 8. That would be up to the commission. Currently, we're open until 9 on Monday and Wednesdays. I think. Go ahead, Angelina.
I'll just clarify. That wasn't, just to clarify, it was just the data given from the feedback we received. So from the survey, it wasn't recommendations from staff.
Okay.
But that was Monday through Thursday till 8 was the recommendation.
Monday through Thursday.
From
Friday
public
till
surveys.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From the public surveys.
So I apologize for saying it was your recommendation. That makes sense? Commissioner Hauser.
You're talking about this fiscal year, next fiscal year. So this fiscal year is the budget we're in right now, that you think we could do the 2 extra hours on Saturdays.
Correct.
And then we'd have to plan into the next fiscal year, which we're starting to work on the budget, which would then be effective 9 months from now or something like that, before we do anything else.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie.
So if I'm assuming, it sounds like there's no fiscal impact to adding Saturdays. It doesn't look like there's a fiscal.
There is some. There is some fiscal, electricity, heating, cooling, those kinds of things. So there is some fiscal impact. It would be the least fiscal impact that we could absorb in this current fiscal year.
But not any significant staff fiscal impact. So it's a small, more of the utilities and kind of things.
Correct.
So given that, I would hope that we could agendize a vote on that fairly soon, would be one comment. And my other comment is, when you're talking about time and a half on Sundays, my understanding is that we're staffing Central on Sundays with straight time substitute, and I know that's not the right word. Is it extra help?
No, they get time.
And that we don't pay time and a half on Sundays. Is that correct?
Per the MOU, we pay time and a half on Sundays.
2 extra help also?
To whoever works.
Thank you.
And if I could just make one comment, and this is from the non-librarian of the staff, maybe a couple more, but I'm a big believer in keeping the libraries open till 9 p.m. And it kind of goes along with what Tim said. If you start events and programs during the week, you have to start them by 7 o'clock or no one will show up. And to start them at 7 o'clock, you end them at 8:30, and then you have, and I think it's really important, not only for, I think it's important for adult programs, and we can do a lot more of those. And so that's my 2 cents. And of course, I don't have to work till 9 either, so I'll qualify it there.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia and then Commissioner May.
I fully support that the taxpayers pay to tax themselves to extend the hours. And I also honor that we need to let the employees know when we're changing their work schedule and how much it does for signage and all of those things. I highly recommend that we move forward on Saturday, extending the hours on Saturday as soon as possible, and have an action item on that. if that can be done this fiscal year. And then for the next fiscal year, which is being prepared right now, that we look at extending the weekday evenings as they were before. And whether it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock is fine with me. That's not an issue for me, depending on when they do programs or any of those things. Though I was under the impression there were some teen programs on Friday that would go later, or maybe I was wrong about that. But that we have an action item for Saturday evenings as soon as possible. And of course, you do what you have to do in terms of signage, in terms of letting employees know. And then for the next fiscal year, that we instruct Ken to do one more thing, and that is to, what would it cost to do weekday evenings, Mondays through Thursdays at all the branches? Thank you.
Commissioner May.
Always looking for middle ground if I can find it. Another option might be that Monday and Wednesdays are till 9, and Tuesday and Thursday are till 8, so that we're not making such a big leap right away, just as we think about next year.
Commissioner Hauser.
Response to that, my branch librarian feels very strongly that we need to have consistent hours every night, because it just confuses people to hell.
I agree.
I'm just saying that. That's what I've been told.
Okay. So I just request that even though it won't be a large fiscal impact, that we get the numbers on what it will be, what will take to extend the hours to Saturday. I'm definitely in support of Saturday, but I think we would like to see the bottom line.
We can bring that back to a future commission agenda, and then I would encourage, since the process for the commissioners submitting their priorities, if one of the priorities you will be sending to Jane for the Finance Committee to review, if one of your top priorities is library hours, maybe putting specific hours as within that priorities, that will help staff, so that if we see all of the commissioners, if your hours are the same, but putting the specific Sundays or all evenings or till 9 and that kind of thing, that would be helpful to staff.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Reese?
If I read the earlier presentation by Angelina correctly, when they were asking about weekday evenings, they asked until 8 o'clock. They didn't give a time for the people to choose between 8 or 9. So, yeah, you're going to come out with people supporting the 8 o'clock because that's what they have been offered, and they will get it. And may not think to say, hey, no, I really prefer 9. So, unless I misunderstood what you presented.
One of the options was late evenings during the week. It just wasn't as popular as evenings until 8. So, yeah.
So that's your responses to that.
Any other comments before we move on? Great. Well, thank you very much. I think this is exactly what the commission was looking for, was this kind of input, and I think we all agree we want more hours. So that's a unanimous opinion. So we'll look for further information about the cost of the Saturday hours, and for something to come before us soon so that we can go forward with that. Oh. No, this is a discussion. So thank you. And now we'll take item 10.5, which was taken off the consent calendar by Commissioner McKenzie, to ask a question, I think.
I wish I was a supervisor. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really kidding. My comment again, as we talked about this before, on document 10.5.1, the listing, the schedule of locations for commercial property, the 3 at the bottom, at least I know for sure, number 16 and 17.
What page are you on?
10.5.1.
No.
Well, it says page 18, but that's just page 18 of the insurance policy. It's not numbered.
Yeah, it is, but it's hard to read.
Oh, maybe it's printed over.
Okay,
Maybe.
no, I found it. I just didn't know which page you were looking at in that
I
document.
think
So,
it's
okay.
56, but you can't see it.
It's page 18 also.
Yeah.
Commercial property, scheduled
Okay.
locations.
Okay. So 16 and 17, I'm virtually positive those are storage units for Friends Access books. And I would guess that 779 Sebastopol Road is, but I don't know for sure what that is. So we had talked before that we were not covering the Friends facilities or liability or anything for the Friends groups. And so I didn't know if maybe this didn't get updated. I didn't see these things on the statement of values, but they still are on that list.
Yeah. We cover the Friends storage facilities with liability only. In case there was a fire or something, then that would take care of whatever was in those storage facilities.
Then
We took it off the workman's comp policy because they had copied the properties over and they shouldn't have had that on the workman's comp policy for those.
Okay, then we need to cover all of them. So this doesn't include the Roner Park Friends storage. And I don't know how many other ones there might be.
I
turned that-
didn't know Roner Park had a storage facility.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought it up the last time, just in terms of the consistency. So Roner Park does, and I don't know how many other Friends do.
Okay, I guess we'll have to check in with them and we can get those added on.
Okay.
Is it on the library property or is it off property?
No, this one, and the only reason I know this because when I visited the
Roner
Petaluma,
Park, I'm talking about because Sonoma has its right on the property and that would be covered automatically, I'm assuming.
Right.
Okay, but-
Guerneville and Petaluma.
They have
The
different
Guerneville
addresses.
one is a storage site down the street from the library. I know that for sure. And I'm not quite sure about the Petaluma one.
The Petaluma one is right there behind it, but it's a
Different
separate
address.
building behind the library.
Okay.
Petaluma has the two packing crate, the two crates.
Yeah.
And then they also use a room in the
okay.
Kenilworth Center.
All right. Well, we'll contact the Friends and ask them if they have storage sites and get the address for that.
Okay, but Roner Park definitely has a storage facility that's off-site. So, thank you. Just wanted to be consistent.
All right.
All right, is there a motion?
Friendly
I second.
amendment once they're
With the
once
addition
it's
of
amended.
these, any other, as amended, with other Friends storage facilities?
I second.
So we have the first, the motion by Commissioner Hauser, the second by Commissioner Foxen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, so then that takes us down to item 13. There are no actions, there are no actions by resolution. There are no lab appointments. And so items to include in the commission notes. Commissioner
I would
Garcia.
say the ADA policy and also the outcome of the survey.
Could I suggest we do the ADA policy after it's finalized?
Fine. But right now, the survey, how's that? To add the survey results, the community conversations, library service hours, and also something about the all-day staff survey. Okay. Those two things to be included.
I'd like to see together the table included as an upcoming event for the library. Others? The success of the summer reading program? Okay. All right. So that takes us to future agenda items for the commission meetings.
Well, one of them would be the extension of library hours. Wouldn't that be on the agenda as an action item?
Yeah.
And also, I'd like an update on the leases and agreements with the cities.
Anybody else? Commissioner Foxen? Oh, good, yes.
Oh, sorry. Now I have two. A resolution or a proposal of some sort of support of DACA in conjunction with the ALA and the CLA.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll think of more.
I would like a clarification. In terms of our budget proposals, I thought we were to send them to the chair of the finance committee. Are we sending them to Jane?
No, the budget proposals, I believe, would be going to the chair of the finance committee.
All right, we
for
left
this
it, I was supposed to
coming-
get the priorities, and Jane was supposed to get the 50 words or less on if
on the
you wanted a
consultant.
consultant.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And again, for the commissioners' budget priorities, we ask that they limit their list to 3. No, 3. Okay, all right, so I think that's it. So let's adjourn this meeting at 8:40, no, let's say 8:38 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for all that you have contributed to this meeting.